When I was about 15, and when I was 15, my parents had some friends over for some cocktails, and then they left to go off to have dinner, leaving the alcohol and the mixers and the highball glasses and the lemon spritzer out on the kitchen counter, and me and my 13-year-old little sister a little too curious and a little too bored, with nothing better to do, because this was pre-Higgins Boys at Des Moines. We decided to do a little experimenting with the adult entertainments that lay before us. Now, I had never had any experience with alcohol. My sister had had a little, actually, but I was always so busy reading philosophy or dreaming about fencing. But I think that night I just said to myself, what the hell? It's time to learn something new. Or I think that's what I thought. I don't really remember. My sister said it would be fun, so she poured herself a little glass of wine, and I took one of those big highball glasses and filled it half with bourbon and half with gin, because I thought that's what made for a mixed drink. I put a little Coke in it and a spritzer of lemon, and then I downed it. I remember what happened for about 10 minutes, and then it was what was reported to me. I guess that I was running around the house naked, going, I'm drunk, knocking over lamps, unscrewing light bulbs, just making a crazy mess of everything. And I do vaguely remember visiting the porcelain throne once, but I guess I visited there several times. And my sister had me in the cold shower, slapping me, trying to get me to sober up before my parents got home. But to no avail. They walked in the door, and I walked up to them and go, hi! And my father goes, get to bed. I guess did the trick. I was rudely awoken at 7 o'clock the next morning as my mother flipped on the light and brusquely walked up to the bed and opened up the curtains as a cold shock of air came across my painful body, and she stuck her morning breath face into mine and said, where's my curtain? What? I said, pulling lots of cotton out of my mouth before I could say anything else. My curtain, my kitchen curtain is missing, and it's a match set, and it's very expensive, and I don't know where it is, and I don't know what you did with it. Wait till your father talks to you. I guess I'd taken the curtain off the rod at some point the evening before, and I had not a clue what I'd done with it. I could have eaten it for all I knew. Maybe that's why my mouth was so dry. So I thought, well, the first thing to do is get some clothes on. So I slowly, painfully walked up to my dresser and opened up a drawer. And there, stashed amongst my t-shirts, was that kitchen curtain. Why I stored it amongst my clothes, I don't know, except maybe it was my subconscious telling me I really wanted to be a Von Trapp child or something like that. That's not the reason. But anyway, that mystery solved, I slowly and painfully walked then over to my dad's bedroom as he was just getting up, and I quietly knelt and contritely lowered my head, and I said, I'm sorry, Dad, I'll never drink again. That's my dad's favorite part of the story. The part he loves to tell people now, because he knew even then I was not destined to be a teetotaler. In fact, one of my favorite lines of scripture is where Jesus is accused of being a drunkard and a glutton. Party Jesus, that's my Lord. But still, something really changed that day. I think it was my real coming to adulthood, where I realized that the game of being a grown-up is about making choices and then learning to live with the consequences of those choices. And there was always going to be an open liquor cabinet on the journey. And it was up to me to decide whether to go investigate or just worry that I would think about and contemplate the fact that I was still not fencing. It was a choice that I had. And for my father, too, it was really a turning point, a watershed moment in his parenting. Because it was clear that I was no longer a little girl that he could easily police and assume I wouldn't stray. No, if he was going to be an effective parent, he was going to have to learn a new style of parenting, less top-down and more as an equal, if I was going to want him to join me on the next leg of my journey, which was necessarily about learning to make choices for life beyond the nest. I mean, these are the kind of watershed experiences we all need to have with all sorts of relationships if they're to mature properly. And it seems that they come so often through lessons learned the hard way. In the present instance, all of us had screwed up in some way. My sister in wanting to try us all to try a little booze, and me creating something that was essentially poison. And in my parents not locking up the liquor stash when they were done with it. I guess all of us in some way knew that what we were doing or not doing was wrong, but at the same time, we didn't really. And thankfully, nobody went to jail, nobody died, and we found the kitchen curtain, thanks be to God. Which brings us to the second story of creation. The story that contains the characters of Adam and Eve and God and the snake. In this section of Genesis chapter 2 and 3, there's also a story that's commonly known as the story of original sin. Now, the way that this story of original sin goes, usually, is it's understood as what happened first was there was Adam and Eve, who were the world's first humans living in paradise, until they succumbed to the temptations of the devil, and willfully disobeyed God, eating fruit they were commanded not to touch. God got mad and punished them with death and expulsion from the garden and suffering. And that's why all of us live a life filled with sin and suffering and death, because we are descendants of Adam and Eve, those first humans who sold their souls and ours to the devil. Ha 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 ha! That's the humor of the story, right? The devil laughing at our wickedness and folly. Ha 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 ha! Or maybe there's another way the story is meant to be understood. Now, not in every place in the Bible, but in a lot of places in the Bible, God is presented as more or less a loving parent. Always trying to figure out, as loving parents are wont to do, what being a loving parent really means. Now, for some, this is unconscionable, that God could be considered so human-like. But when you think that one of the main points of the Bible is that we're created in God's image, we are God-like, then it's going to make sense that humans in the Bible experience God as quite human-like, a lot like them. So what if this story of Genesis 2 and 3 is more like a messy coming-of-age story, sort of like getting drunk for the first time?